One small announcement. We won't be meeting coming Sunday. I have to leave tomorrow and I'll be away for 4 days. But we'll be meeting on the 20th, on the eve of the 21st. We are in the midst of a portion describing the struggle of Savitri, who finds the day of doom approaching. Intolerant of the poverty of time, her passion catching at the fugitive hours, willed the expense of centuries in one day of prodigal love and the surface of ecstasy. She finds that time is flying. She is unable to exhaust her love, her joy of love within the limited number of days, and she is intolerant that time is so miserly, and as the hours are flying by, she tries to catch time and compress the experience of centuries in one day. That is, she is living intensely without wasting a moment. Of prodigal love and the surface of ecstasy. Prodigal love which is largely spent without calculation, and the bubbling of ecstasy. Or else she strove even in mortal time to build a little room for timelessness. Here is a secret about the yogic technique to get out of the compulsions of time. Most of us are driven by time. Before we are aware of it, half the day is over. And so relentlessly it goes on. Now, how to get over, stand behind, stand above the compulsions of time, to feel that you can order your own life. Here is the first hint. She strove even in mortal time to build a little room for timelessness. There is somewhere deep in us a corner where there is no time. You feel the breath of the eternal. That is at the level of the self. Behind the emotional layer, which is what is meant by the Anahata chakra, is the psychic being which is involved in evolution, which is the fount of joy and love. Behind the psychic is the self, Atman of the Upanishads, which just watches. It always stands above the flow of the stream, uninvolved, unspent, timeless. And one of the steps of this yoga and the whole step of some other types of yoga is to become conscious of that level of the eternal in us. First by mental imagination, second by evocation, third by creating a favorable climate of not rushing, of not being rushed, and getting into that maybe for a moment, again and again. And that is how the door opens for entry into the timeless. It is a succeeding step to be poised there in some central part of the being and function. So Savitri, she strove even in mortal time to build a little room for timelessness by the deep union of two human lives. That is, if the union is only on the material and the surface level, this is not possible. So she works to have a union at a deeper level with Satyavan and thereby create a little niche, a little room for the timeless. Her soul secluded, shut into his soul. Secluded. This is the second hint. Anyone who wakes to the necessity of an inner life has to create a period or moments of seclusion. Seclusion is not physical seclusion, which is pretty well impossible in modern conditions. But it is always in our hands to create a seclusion within, to create a spot, build up an area where there is no crowd. Crowd, not physical crowd, but the crowd of passions, crowd of emotions, crowd of thoughts, crowd of ideas, crowd of impulsions. Somewhere, a solitude. You should be able always to withdraw into that solitude of the soul. And her soul, so secluded, loses itself in the soul of Satyavan. And that is the deep union of which the poets speak. And then he says, after all was given, she demanded still. She was insatiable in her seeking for love. Or even after Satyavan gave all that he could, she demanded still. Even by his strong embrace, unsatisfied, she longed to cry. She was so intense. She wished that she could openly express, O tender Satyavan, O lover of my soul, Give more. Give more of love while yet thou canst. She could not express it openly because she does not know yet. Inside she feels, give me more of thy love, and thou still can give, because thou livest. To whom? To her thou lovest. She longed to cry, not to speak, but in the intensity of her passion, she wants to cry. Imprint thyself for every nerve. Put your stamp on every nerve of mine so that I can preserve your stamp. Imprint thyself for every nerve to keep that thrills to thee the message of my heart. Each nerve of mine vibrates and speaks to thee the message of my heart, and to that nerve imprint thyself on each such nerve. For soon we part, because she knows that the parting is across threshold, and who shall know how long before the great wheel in its monstrous round, once we part, once there is death, we really do not know how long this great wheel of birth and death in its monstrous round. It takes an inordinate time. It doesn't care for human feelings. And who shall know how long before the great wheel in its monstrous round restore us to each other and our love? All lovers believe or want to believe that even if they are parted by death, they will meet again. So Sri Aurobindo gives expression to that common sentiment. So she wants him to give and give more, because one does not know when they would meet again once they are parted. But she does not say these things. Why? Too well she loved to speak a fateful word and lay her burden on his happy head. That man is happy as it is. He believes this love is going to be eternal. And she loves him so much that she does not want to speak that fateful word which will strike him down. And she does not want to lay her burden of grief on his head that is happy. That is the sign of deep love. One does not rush to the other with all one's burden. One wants to keep the other as cheerful, as happy, as long as possible, without communicating the grief or the cause of grief. And in the process, she pressed the outsurging grief back into her breast to dwell within, silent, unhelped, alone. As the day approaches, the grief which is gathering momentum surges forward, but she forces it back into her breast to endure, to suffer it in silence, alone, unhelped by another. But Satyavan sometimes half understood. Somehow he feels in the atmosphere that vibration of anxiety, that she is disturbed. So he says, but Satyavan sometimes half understood or felt at least with the uncertain answer of our thought-blinded hearts the unuttered need, the unplumbed abyss of a deep, passionate want. What does he feel? What does he understand how? The unplumbed abyss, the depth, the profound, which has not been measured, of a deep, passionate want. She is in want of something. She needs something. And he has not been able to scale that, but he feels it. And where does he feel? Which our thought-blinded hearts, our hearts are rarely allowed to live with their emotions. They are blinded by the thoughts, by the mental preferences, mental apprehensions. So thought-blinded hearts naturally give an uncertain answer to every situation. The heart is unable to give the right answer because it is blinded by the mind. And the unuttered need, the need of the other which is not uttered, the heart cannot fully grasp. Still he does what he can. All of his speeding days that he could spare, whatever time he could spare from his regular work, going to the forest, cutting the wood, gathering the leaves, tending the parents, all these occupied a lot of his time. Whatever he could snatch from that daily activities, all of his speeding days that he could spare from labor in the forest, hewing wood for fuel, for sacrifices, and hunting food in the wild sylvan glades, in the forests, grass, creepers. He had to hunt for food. Hunt. Naturally, in the forest they were not vegetarians. And service to his father's sightless life. He was blind. And he had to serve. He gave to her whatever time he could snatch, he could spare, he gave to her and helped to increase the hours. He created that illusion that she is getting more hours than 24. How? By the nearness of his presence and his clasp and lavish softness of heart-seeking words, sweet words, touching her heart. He was lavish, generously using. And the close beating felt of heart on heart. His heart beat in unison with her heart, and each could feel the harmony with which each heart beat with the other. With all that he did, with all his effort, all was too little for her bottomless need. She was hardly satisfied. Her demand, her need was bottomless, insatiable. So it was too little. If in his presence she forgot a while, if she forgot her grief for a while in his presence, grief filled his absence with its aching touch. When he was away, grief fully occupied her being with its aching touch. And in that grief, she saw the desert of her coming days imaged in every solitary hour. Every hour without him was empty, solitary, and that gave her an idea, a reflection of the desert of her coming days, when she would have to be alone without the company of the loved one. But occasionally she would imagine that she also would die with him. She would burn herself on the pyre, go through the fire, and join him in heaven. No, these are the mythological conceptions. Though I remember once when there was an occasion, I asked mother whether this is not a superstition, that if the wife commits sati, burns herself with the body of her husband, hoping, expecting to join him there, is it not a superstition? She turned round and told me, why should it be so? It is possible if there is that intensity of aspiration, on the wings of that aspiration to join the person, the two can be together. Naturally, there is a distinction between a wife who loves so intensely, joining her husband of her own free will and making a bonfire of herself, and the institution of sati, where the woman was compelled by the relatives, by the society, to throw herself, or she was pushed into the fire. That is an unwilling coercion. That is not what mother meant. What mother meant is the origin of this sati custom was in the possibility of the lovers uniting in the intensity of their aspiration to be together. That is, by the way. Now here Savitri also imagines that she too can do that. So he refers to it, although with a vain imaginary bliss of fiery union through death's door of escape, she dreamed of her body robed in funeral flame. She knew she must not clutch that happiness, to die with him and follow. In her heart of hearts, though she may play with that idea, in her heart of hearts she knew that she could not, she was not meant to do it. Not that she could not do it, but she was not meant for it. She must not clutch that happiness, to die with him and follow, seizing his robe across our other countries, travelers glad into the sweet or terrible beyond. That word terrible beyond, it changes the whole complexion. She knew she could not do it. Why? He gives a very touching reason. For those sad parents still would need her here to help the empty remnant of their day. These aged, exiled, blind parents would still be there. And who would help them? She had to be there to serve them. Whatever remained of her life, whatever empty remained, it had to be filled to help. So she thinks of her duty to the parents of Satyavan, and not of herself, not of the door of escape for herself. So she says, for those sad parents still would need her here to help the empty remnant of the day. This is Sri Aurobindo's touch, which is not in any other account of Savitri. Often it seemed to her the age's pain had pressed their quintessence into her single woe, concentrating in her a tortured world. She often felt that her pain, her grief was not personal, was not individual. She had a feeling that ages long pure incense, her life the altar, herself the sacrifice. The priest, she is the hidden priest, she is the dumb priest. The hidden gods are there claiming her sacrifice. She offers her wordless offering, and the altar, the platform on which she pours, is her life, and the oblation, the bali, is herself. Still the gods are not satisfied. Yet ever, now he shifts back to Satyavan, yet ever they grew into each other more. As days advance, they grow into each other, into their inner identity more and more, until it seemed no power could rend apart, since even the body's walls could not divide. All sense of separativity was lost. Even the physical separation of bodies was no more effective. For when he wandered in the forest, oft her conscious spirit walked with him and knew his actions as if in herself he moved. She was a yogi. She had a capacity to extend herself, spread his consciousness around him, so that wherever he went, she often felt her conscious spirit walked with him and knew all that he did. It was as if he was moving in herself. But he was not aware of it so much. He less aware, thrilled with her from afar. Still he would feel her impact. He would not know that she is present, but some impact he felt from far. Always the stature of her passion grew. Grief, fear became the food of mighty love. Love grew on what? What is the sustenance? What is the food that helped the love to grow? Grief, fear. That is the very idea of losing, the very idea of parting intensifies that love. And grief and fear became the food of mighty love. Take it up next time.